Hi, I'm Heidi Otway, the president of Salter Mitchell Public Relations and your host for this Fluent in Floridian podcast. Today, I'm interviewing Robin Hassler Thompson, the founder and executive director of the Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center. Robin, I am so happy to have you on the show. You and I go way back on a lot of things, and now I get to share your awesomeness with Floridians and people who listen to our podcast beyond the state of Florida.
You are so kind. Thank you for inviting me. And it's just so great to be here. I can't believe it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just thrilled. I really am.
Yeah,
this is an honor.
We've been trying to get you on the show for a while, and the stars lined up, and
Yes.
here we are today.
Yes.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
let's talk about you.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll give it a go. Let's have fun.
So earlier today, we were talking and learned that both of us are from South Florida.
Yes.
And you are from Hialeah, Florida.
Hialeah General Hospital, born
And
there. Yes.
That's where I was born.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
Stop it.
I know. I mean, really.
Really?
How could that be? And here we are in Tallahassee.
And here we are in Tallahassee.
It's just, isn't that so wild?
I know. Amazing. So I enjoyed my life growing up in South Florida. Tell us about your life when you were growing up in South Florida.
Sure. Well, I was born in Hialeah, but then moved to Fort Lauderdale when my family was just starting out and with me. And so I really grew up in Fort Lauderdale, and all my education through high school was there. And it was wonderful. I mean, I loved everything about it, to be honest with you. I loved being outside. I loved school. I loved, when I think about it, I look back and I think, gosh, it was so, I don't know, just fantastic to know that you could go to the beach every weekend.
Yeah.
You could play tennis.
Yeah.
You could, so anyway, I loved our backyard. It was just it was really fun, know?
Yeah. Now, are you the only child, or do you have siblings? Tell me about your family.
I'm a yours, mine, and ours family. If you ever hear that movie, so my mom married my stepdad when I was 2. He had 3 kids. She had me, and together they had my baby brother Bobby, who's just turned 60, so not a baby. But so I grew up in kind of a large, just chaotic, I would say, blended family is what we call it today. So that was another experience. But yeah, so it was kind of a lot of siblings and coming and going and all the rest.
Were you the oldest?
I was the oldest in part 2 in a way, but really I have 3 older step siblings and 1 younger brother. So I'm kind of middle bottom.
In the middle, the one baby in the middle.
Just, I can't even, it's just,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about what was your journey like from high school into college, and you have this storied career in the legal profession. So tell me, how did that become? What sparked your interest in law and led you to where you are today?
Well, I would say that my mother is like the greatest influence in my life, which a lot of people say, and it's true, I'm sure as well. But just reflecting on it, I have to say that. So I remember being age 4 and listening to the Democratic National Convention on TV. I was like at her knee as she was ironing. Wow. And I remember that, right? So politics has been a thing for me. And when I was in high school, I actually got a little bored. I went to St. Thomas Aquinas High School, which was a great high school, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to do more. And so as a senior, I started working on Jimmy Carter's campaign in 1976. Wow. And I loved it. And that was when Carter was running. There were 9 people in the field. In fact, kind of when we're recording now was the Florida primary, March 9th in 1976. I just remember it like it was yesterday. And I remember getting so involved in that campaign. And I ended up being kind of a volunteer coordinator for Carter for Broward County. And after that, I just had the bug, and I started to get more interested and involved in politics. And of course, we know how that campaign ended. He gets elected. Yeah. I went to the inauguration. Still remember the dress, by the way.
Were you this was all in high school?
high school. I was a senior in high school.
You are an overachiever.
No, totally. but it was so much fun. And that's when I went to DC and saw Washington for the first time and said, I want to go to school here. And I applied to a bunch of schools, and then American University accepted me, and I had a scholarship. I got a scholarship to various ways, work, study, to be able to go to school there. So, and then I spent 4 years in DC as a student, which if anybody is listening and has a second thought about where they are thinking where to go, I just loved everything about to be a student there. So much free stuff, great transportation. You learn so much, and it's just a cultural mecca. So I adored it. And so that was great. And so that's kind of that evolution.
Well, what did you study?
I studied, I started a poli-sci. I was, political science.
Political science, right.
But then I thought, I want to do something else. So I studied English literature as well. I learned French. It was like a smorgasbord to me. I mean, the opportunities were just so good. And AU is a great school. The campus is very accessible. So I had a really positive experience there.
Okay. And then what happened when you graduated?
Well, I didn't know I always see life as not wanting to close any doors behind me. So what would I do in graduate school to keep the most doors open? And so the law was that answer for me. I had a mentor when I was in school, and I remember talking to her because I was also thinking about doing something in the State Department or just in international relations.
Right.
And there's a school called the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, and I was thinking that would be a great place to go. And then my friend who was a lawyer, my friend mentor, she said, Robin, she said, there are people with their masters in law and diplomacy from, in this area selling books at the DuPont Circle bookstore. Go to law school. Right. Go to law school, young woman. Yeah. And so I took her advice to heart, and I applied to a lot of law schools. And then I got in here at FSU. Oh. And it was great because I could still be in a capital city.
Exactly.
And during the time in law school, I did take advantage. I interned at the legislature for a couple of sessions, more than a year, which kind of broke some rules, but they needed somebody and they called me back. And I was a clerk at the Supreme Court for a semester as well. So I was able to kind of get a sense of that sector of our government. And I got a master's at the same time. So I got my master's, and so I ended up getting.
Minute. You got a JD
and an MA.
And an MA at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. Overachiever. I love it.
You know what? It was another thing now that I'm thinking of it. I think I kind of got bored at law school. Not bored as in there's not enough to do because there was plenty.
Yeah.
But it wasn't floating my boat, So I was able to do this joint degree program. Yeah. And so I got my master's. So that's when I got my master's in international affairs from FSU. Yeah. It's not Tufts,
Right.
But I was able to take courses in religion and economics and diplomatic history as well as law. And that was great.
That sounds amazing because you touched on so many things that really shape, for the work that you do now, advocacy, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think all of that shaped you. So how did you transition from law school into your career as an advocate? Because that's, as long as I've known you to be a champion for those who are either vulnerable or at risk or women and, marginalized communities. And so tell us about how that became who you are known for today. What was the spark?
Well, again, I go back to my mom and really, just I can't explain, what motivates you. I feel like there's the Zen saying, you just polish your path when you go from one to the other. Yeah. And for me, it was always about some kind of service. I feel like if you go to law school, it's about, you have a special, it's like a special gift or a special permission to do good in society, to do something that's going to improve the lives of others. That's just how I always, the first and this is I'll confess total naivete when I went to law school and was talking to some friends and said, "Why did you go to law school?" And thinking, "Oh, I wanted to be able to, I just wanted to make a lot of money." And I thought, "What?
Yeah.
How? What?" It just felt like then I realized I was maybe more in the minority on that, but it was always about public service to me in some form or another.
Yeah.
The first firm I went to work for was one that was billed itself as an international law firm, and I was thinking like law of the sea and all that. It wasn't. It was just buying and selling banks to people in South America. That was not international law.
Right.
I mean, it was, but it was.
Yeah,
So
right.
that didn't get me going. So I was in Miami doing that for a couple of years, cut my teeth on everything from trial practice to writing, contracts and leases to litigation and all this stuff. So I learned a lot about the practice of law, and I realized I didn't want to be in that kind of a legal environment.
Right.
And I came back to Tallahassee then and worked in the legislature.
Okay. Tell me about that.
So I started out in the majority office, was a legal counsel there.
Who was the governor at that time?
The governor was Bob Graham. Could that be? Yeah.
Was it in the 80s?
Who was the governor? The governor. So I came back. It would have been, it would have been in the 80s. It would have been 89. I came back in 89.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was Graham. I think it was his last year or something.
I think you're right, because when I was in high school, he would come and teach our civics class at Miami City High School.
He was there from Miami Lakes.
Yeah. And then I would come up here for when they would bring the students up to experience the legislature. And so we would get the Florida ties.
Yes.
Remember, that was his thing, the Florida tie.
Florida ties.
And so somewhere in my attic, I still have my Florida tie from high school when
Heidi,
I came
that's
up.
so cool.
One day I'm going to bring it out and wear it.
Yeah. And then you could also walk around with your little notepad. Remember, you used to take notes and take everybody's name down. So that was then.
Yeah.
And then after a few years of that, I went to the Criminal Justice Committee, and I was staff director in the House Criminal Justice.
Wow.
And so from there, it was right around that time that Lawton Chiles was running for governor.
Yeah.
And I worked on that campaign. I think it was the first campaign after Jimmy Carter that I really, jumped in wholeheartedly. I still worked, but did that on the side. And then I went to work for Governor Chiles. I was invited to be part of his staff when he started out. So that was a huge honor and wonderful.
How long were you with Lawton Chiles, the governor?
The whole time,
the
8 years.
Whole time.
I'm one of the few. I think there are a number of us, but from the outset, from the very beginning to his passing, unfortunately, and then that last few weeks with Buddy McKay as governor. Yes, I was there for the entire 8 years.
Wow. I was a young reporter covering that story when he passed away. I'll never forget it.
I know.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it when I got the call. I was like, "You're kidding. No, this isn't true. It can't be." And it was true. And it was, we covered it we were here in Tallahassee at the TV station, and everything we did went out across the world about it. He made such an impact.
And I will tell you, I feel like I was spoiled by Lawton Chiles and Buddy McKay, because the same thing in my tenure in the legislature, we worked so hard to do what was right. And I know a lot of people can debate what is quote right, but he and Buddy at the time too, they were at a time in their careers when they were not looking at the latest poll. They were not. And I remember sitting in meetings and them saying, "Well, what's the right thing to do?"
Wow.
And then just being able to say, "Well, this is what I think is right. These are people that are lined up to do it, and this is what we need to do, and go for it." That was the message that I always got. And when you have someone who has that wisdom and experience, and really at their core such good people, I mean, it's, again, what an honor and what a great opportunity. It's really what I mean, that public service also, I think, defined me a lot,
Yeah. So, who would you consider Governor Childs and Lieutenant Governor McKay as like your people that you admired or who really shaped you for who you are today?
Gosh, there are so many people along the way. I mean, absolutely from like more of a thing, but there are people that I worked with. Linda Shelley is one of them, who is the chief of staff there for a while. Ron Silver, who ended his career as a senator, but when I worked for him, he was a representative.
Yeah.
Ron was just always so good. And then throughout, there are just these people that pop up in your life, I think at times when you need that guidance and then they're there and then you move on,
Yeah. That's awesome. So tell us about, you worked in the legislature, you worked on campaigns. You're now the co-founder of the Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center, where you're working to help end this horrible practice of human and sex trafficking in the state of Florida, which we have seen a rise in the last few years. So tell us about that role and how it came about.
Well, first of all, I just really have to acknowledge you because you have been so incredibly supportive of this issue here locally and beyond. I mean, really to you and to Salter Mitchell PR, because you all have just been monumental in helping our organization.
It's a great cause.
Get out there and grow. So thank you to you all.
Yeah.
For me, though, it started really as an outgrowth of my work for Governor Childs, because there I was working on domestic and sexual violence issues. That's how I ended up the last several years of working for Childs, was working on that issue. And then, we had a statewide task force. We had legislative initiatives and programs and did a ton of stuff, just did a lot. And and throughout all that, I started to learn about trafficking. So I was invited by the U.S. State Department to do some training on domestic violence in Bangladesh. And when I was there, that's where I learned about trafficking.
Really?
And I saw children who were labor trafficked as camel jockeys in the shelter that I will never, ever forget the faces of those young boys. And by the way, it's a show on Bryant Gumbel did this incredible show about it. If you ever have a chance.
No,
I mean,
watch.
It is amazing to see how, and especially because your history in the media, to have that show highlight this evil of what was going on.
Right.
And then the shame it brought upon the perpetrators of that, which were these wealthy the people who race camels, like we race horses here, brought the shame upon them for essentially kidnapping or convincing parents to give them their children and paying them to be camel.
Goodness.
Anyway, I saw those kids after they had been brought back from that enslavement.
Yeah.
And then just said, when I get back to the U.S., I have to do something. I don't know what, I have to do something.
Yeah.
And literally within a couple of months, Terry Coonan at the Human Rights Center called and said, hey, we're doing some work on human trafficking. Would you like to help us? I mean, out of the blue.
Really?
And when I was, I remember being in that hotel in Bangladesh when I went back to my room saying, I want to, just like, I have to do something. And so that call came in. And so that opened the door. And what I did essentially was do some work to also help people who are working on violence against women issues understand and work on this issue of sex and labor trafficking.
Yeah. Wow.
So I started with that, and excuse me, at FSU we had a working group that basically was telling everybody in the state how to get on board with addressing this issue and helping survivors. And then some of us looked around and said, we're telling everybody else to do something, and we're not doing it here. Oh. So that then came into some of us saying, well, how can we be a service provider?
Right.
What would it take in our community to start that? And with the help of Pamela Marsh was U.S. Attorney then, and her office really helped stand up STAC. Really said, we need to have an entity whose only job it is to focus on labor and sex trafficking and to
Yeah.
work in partnership in the community.
Yeah.
And so it really was kind of a grassroots from our local trafficking coalition, identifying the need that she led. And then just again, that confluence of support and a flow that said, okay, now what do we need to do? And then we've moved forward. We just turned 8 years old. So.
Yeah, congratulations. I'll never forget that when we first started having conversations, and I look, you gave me the data, you told me about, what was happening in the Tallahassee area. And one of the things that stuck with me is that once you know, you can't unknow what's happening in your community. And that's why I was just so compelled to support you, because I was like, I do not want this happening in my community.
Yes.
And I would see things and I'm like, okay, this is what Robin taught us in the class that we should be looking out for. And it's like I'm paying attention now. And I tell my friends, and they're paying attention now because, like I said, once you know, you can't unknow.
Well, your voice, and if anybody listening here wants to know what to do, and
let's talk
no
about
matter where you sit.
Yeah.
So I use that quote that you just said.
Yeah.
Once you know it, you can't know it. I use it all the time because I said, this is what Heidi Otway said, because that is the truth. And when people get that,
once you get it.
And also, what was so great about you is that you saw it in reality.
I did.
Like a lot of people look at a movie or the latest SVU or something that sensationalizes this issue and does a huge disservice to the people who are being, groomed and recruited and exploited, because it's not reality. It's not, we've assisted over 200 survivors since our inception. And
that's amazing.
None of that Hollywood stuff is what happens to these folks.
Right.
It's the everyday sort of oppression.
Yeah.
Through any kind of work, or whether it's any kind of work or through any kind of commercial sex act.
Yeah.
So that's what was so great. I remember, and you just telling everybody, wake up,
wake up,
you business community people, you have to do more.
This is so, like I said, once you know, you can't unknow. Yeah. So thank you for this. I mean, I'm not wrapping up this conversation, but I just want to tell you, thank you for all that you're doing, because it's making an impact on people. I mean, I've seen the stories, and I've read seen the videos of folks who you've helped overcome, this heinous crime. And they said, I didn't know who to turn to. And you all stepped up.
I got a call just today where someone said, I didn't know you were here until someone just told me.
Yeah.
And she was with a survivor who needs help.
Yeah.
So it's that incremental, like, information, word of mouth, or things like this, or our website. And so
tell the folks who are listening, because since we're on this subject, where do they need to go to learn the signs and also how to support this cause?
Right. So our website is surviveandthriveadvocacy.org. So it's long, but once you get it, you get it.
Yeah.
Right. So and we have a podcast. It's called Imagine Freedom.
Yeah.
We have a page called Educational Resources.
Yeah.
And every month, on every third Friday, we do a webinar on the topic. This month, it's going to be on human trafficking in the schools, because I don't do a training ever where someone doesn't say, and what are we doing in the schools?
Right.
So we're having some experts. So you can go to our website. You can also know that there's a national human trafficking hotline number, because I know this podcast goes
Everywhere. Yep.
So 888-3737-888, just Google National Human Trafficking Hotline 24/7, multilingual. We're a referral source. So if you're here locally in Tallahassee, we'll get that call.
Okay. Right.
So that's our place to look. And on our podcast, we also do something a little different. I talk with survivors, and it's not to and I feel sometimes there's a re-exploitation of survivors when people make them talk about the worst things that have ever happened to them, which isn't helpful.
No.
And so the women and men that we've spoken with talk about, really, they get real for sure, but they also say, and this is what you need to pay attention to now.
Right.
So these are ways to help you.
And help you.
Yeah.
Right. Because once you know,
you know you
cannot
unknow it. I swear, we need that on one of these mugs right here. That's what I need, a STAC mug that says that.
Yeah. So Robin, you have a storied career and you've done so much. So out of all of your accomplishments, what are you most proud of?
You asked me that. You said you were going to ask me that. So just bursting the bubble from everybody. I got that question in advance and I still don't know what to say. I am really proud of STAC. I will tell you that. That is something I'm really proud of.
I can tell.
Very proud of the work I did with Governor Childs as well. Yeah. I think that in terms of career, there's absolutely I can't imagine a more exciting and more meaningful journey there. I love the work I do locally now, and starting a nonprofit at age 56. That I thought I was nuts. What am I doing? But there was just no choice. It just felt like I needed to do that. So, I'm very proud of that. It's really hard to say. To point to one thing.
Yeah. So when you're not advocating, where can we find you? What do you do? What are your favorite activities?
Well, I like to make jewelry. I think you know that.
Yes.
So that's kind of right brain activity, to sort of counter that. And I've had fun with that over the years. And I just planted tomatoes and all kinds of things in my garden.
Nice.
You got to get your hands in the dirt sometimes. And that to me is literally grounding, right?
Yeah.
So you have to do that. And that's very, and I love to be with friends.
Yeah.
I love to just be with good girlfriends, do whatever.
Yeah.
Travel or cook or eat or just have a drink. It's just fun to connect with people.
Yeah.
That's there. And family is wonderful as well.
Yeah.
I really get a lot of love and support. So so that's all there,
Yeah. Well, I love you. And
I
love
love
everything
you.
that you do.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank you so much for being our guest on this Fluent in Floridian podcast. And please go visit STAC's website, because not only is there information about all the wonderful things that Robin's doing to help the community, but it also can help you learn the science, because once you know, you can't unknow
it. You're right. And my board would be very upset if I didn't say you can donate as well if you want to support our work, because that's how we keep the lights on.
Yes.
So
very
and
important.
some people don't know what they can do. So if you want to do that, we'd love it.
Okay,
Thank you.
do it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.